Look, this might sound over the top or super dramatic, but Alliance RV made the dumbest, stupidest mistake an RV manufacturer could make in 2026, and it's not even close. Welcome to HBRV Lifestyle, the podcast. I'm the host, John Levingston, aka the Honey Badger, here to give it to you straight and transparent about the RV business, as well as some other things. Now, if you've been watching for a while or a fan of the channel, you know I love the ownership group over at Alliance RV. Loved them when they started Heartland and built that up. Big fan of them. Love Alliance. I know they've had issues when we talk about the showers, separating rear cap on some of the stuff. We've talked about that. But for the most part, I'm a big, huge fan. But this mistake that they made, this misstep, could cost them the entire company. And I'm not joking. Now, I'm not saying they're gonna go out of business, but this decision could put them out of business. How? Well, we've talked a lot about propaganda on this channel. And the biggest propaganda piece out there right now is about Class B or van conversion motorhomes. Now, the industry as a whole overbuilt the van life because that was the next big thing. A lot of that came from a push during COVID. A lot of that came from a push of folks that wanted to park it in their driveway. And according to HOAs, you can't have an RV there. So a van is the perfect option. Small, compact. You see, how many van life YouTubers and TikTokers are there? Not even talking about Instagram and Facebook. There's hundreds, if not thousands of people on social media that live in their van. Now, I use air quotation marks because I kind of know the truth about that, but more on that a little bit later. Now, what I have noticed and what the industry has noticed as far as the dealership industry is that the van motorhome market is so oversaturated that they can't move them fast enough. And realistically, a lot of dealers are not taking new inventory right now because they're overstocked. Now, when it comes to your traditional motorhome, Class C's, Class A gas, Class A diesel, and niche stuff like Super C's, which are the diesel front end, like your Renegades and your Dynamax type motorhomes, those are moving at an actual regular pace. For a while, that market actually slowed down. Again, we talked about it, COVID and parking it in my driveway and blah, blah, blah. Well, now those folks are figuring out when they go in one of these van motorhomes, it's like there's no storage. There's no space. You're confined like you're in a van. While you go into a 26, 27-foot Class C, you go into a 30-foot Class A gas, you get multiple pop-outs, multiple slides, lots of storage, more flexibility for you on the road. You also get, in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, you get more tow capacity. Now, I'm not referring, for those of you raise your hand and go, why you can't do the overland stuff and you can't get the big 4x4 chassis in a Ford gas Class A. No, I get it. We're not talking about that niche. We're talking about the overall market. Now, before I get into the mistake, real quick, I want to throw this out there. Growing up in the industry, in my career, Class B motorhome buyers or van motorhome buyers generally mostly sleep in hotel rooms. My grandparents were a perfect example of this. My grandmother had Crohn's and colitis. Now, if you don't know what that is, you can look that up yourself. Don't really want to discuss to anybody, or especially if you're eating, you don't want to really know what that is. But at the end of the day, they loved to go back east. They loved camping, but they loved going back east and antiquing and going up and down all around the United States. And they mostly did it in a truck with a suitcase and stayed at the Hampton Inn or Holiday Inn. Well, my grandfather bought a road trek motorhome. And while they did camp in it a couple of nights a year, maybe 6 or 7 nights a year, most of the road trips they were staying at the Holiday Inn. Now, they used everything in the motorhome, the refrigerator, the stove. They actually had a blast because they had their own little kitchenette, their own bathroom. My grandfather basically said he bought an $80,000 toilet. And they had a lot of other creature comforts that they could pull over the side of the road at a rest stop and hang out for 8 or 9 hours, cook themselves some food, maybe take a little bit of a nap, and off they were running. But actual camping, they might have camped maybe 7 nights a year in it. That was the reality. Now, the other interesting part is my grandfather thought, oh, people must be just camping these left and right. And my grandfather found out as they were on several trips over a 6-year period from 2012 to 2018 when my grandmother passed away, he found out that the majority of the people in his van group all did the same thing, including some people that said they lived in it on YouTube were staying at the Holiday Inns he was staying in. So it's just proof positive it was a niche item that only a few manufacturers built. Then COVID happened and boom, this big explosion, right? It ballooned. Now you got so many manufacturers, etc., etc. So what does this all have to do with the mistake that Alliance made? Well, you can already guess where I'm going with this. So Alliance RV bought Midwest Automotive Design. Now, Midwest is a great product. They're one of the older van motorhome, van shuttle, and luxury transportation companies in the industry. They're not just an RV manufacturer. But why would you buy that when everything is so oversaturated? You have to manufacture and sell product to keep that company going. And right now, we are in the biggest, crappiest van motorhome market there's been since 2018, 2019? And the market is so oversaturated with inventory, this literally could bury Alliance RV in basically a debt or cash flow problem real quick. Now, the good news is Midwest does build other stuff. They don't just build motorhomes. So it maybe, possibly might be able to hold itself afloat with its other actual products it sells. But the more profitable side of the industry, obviously, is the van motorhome side. So why are van motorhomes not selling like they used to? My guess would be is folks are seeing the $200,000 price tag on an Echo or a $250,000 price tag on a leisure van, or seeing $125,000 ticket on a Winnebago Travato or a Thor product or a Forest River or Coachman Beyond, and went, I can buy a 30-foot Class A motorhome with multiple pop-outs, lots of storage, way more comfortability for the same money or less. Or that actual buyer just isn't willing to pay $200,000 for a van. Maybe they're in the used market because, again, not willing to pay that kind of money for a van. Okay. Now, the biggest problem I can foresee with all this is if Midwest Vans cannot sell product, Alliance RV will be out of business within 24 months. Why would you be dumb enough to buy that thing? It's like, look, Rev Group sold Lance. Okay, and I think I already said this already, but when the original Lance Corporation, Lance Campers, Lance Travel Trailers, was privately owned. It was a premier builder, the best of the best. It was hard to compete in the truck camper industry with Lance. The downfall of that company began by being purchased by a corporation like Rev Group that stripped everything that made Lance special, made a generic trailer with a beautiful interior, and raised the price and raised the profit margin like all corporations do to make their books look better. What happened to that corporation? It hemorrhaged money. It wasn't selling stuff. There's a lot of Lance truck campers out there that are 3 years old that have not been sold. There's a lot of product out there that is just severely overpriced. For what you can buy a $22.95 Lance for brand new, you can purchase 4 $20,000 or less travel trailers. And now it's in the hands and been sold off into hands. And I'm going to say allegedly to cover my butt, but allegedly to a group of dealership owners' sons. I know most of the people in that group, or I know the faces of the group, and I know who the back door of the group is, because again, the majority of them are kids or family members of dealerships in Southern California and other places in the West Coast. How are they going to rebound Lance and get the product sold on the open market with such the bad reputation? Now, at least Midwest Vans, what they have going for them is they have a wonderful reputation in the industry and in other pockets and segments of vans and converted transportation that they sell to. But once again, the question is going to be, are they going to be able to make that company profitable in the slow van economy? You can't just have one leg trying to basically feed the other. At the end of the day, I hope they make it. I really do, because I love those guys. I think they're awesome. They're great for the industry. They're great for the lifestyle. They're great for the community. Most people may disagree with me because we hate RV manufacturers or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, they're good for everybody. Until next time, remember that RV always stands for toolkit and sense of humor.